Welcome back to the next video in the Unlocking Your Crypto Journey educational series. Today, we're going to be talking personal finance. Now, we're not going to be giving you financial advice, but what I've done is brought in two people to give you their personal finance strategies and some things to think about when it comes to your personal finances. The first is Crypto Billy. So let's get to what he's got to say about personal finance. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next video. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about personal finances. And I've got Crypto Billy back here with me today. Billy, appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming back.
Yes, sir. No problem.
I guess we should probably start off with the standard quote, right? We are not financial advisors. I like to say I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just some old guy. And if you're looking for a more detailed financial plan, something that's more individualized, obviously find a financial advisor in your neck of the woods. I would say maybe a financial advisor that definitely has some experience in the cryptocurrency space so you can take advantage of both sides of the fence. Okay. In our last video, I asked Billy to expound on something that he originally mentioned on a stream back in November of 2024 when he and I were together. And to me, it was very profound. It was one of those things that just kind of like hit me in the face and was like, wow, I need to do that. It seems like a simple concept, the idea of paying yourself first. Billy, please talk to everybody about that, because if nothing else, I think that's the key that people need to walk away from this video with today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that's resonating with you, Keith, and hopefully the whole audience. So if you have goals, if you have financial goals, if you want $1 million, or if you want that new car, or if you want to pay for your kids' college funds, or whatever it is, the first thing you have to do is change your habits. You have to have a paradigm shift in your mind, and you have to understand that you need to be your own boss, just like you would if you were starting a new company, and be your own boss and pay yourself first. So the oxygen mask has to go on your face first so that you can help other people. And so it's so important, and it's difficult today with, of course, inflation the way it is. Everything costs so much more. A lot of the millennials and younger folks are really having a hard time saving $1. Now, but part of that I try to separate out is a mindset shift, which we covered in the last video, because your thoughts are very powerful. What's in your head is very powerful. That's what can manifest your and put you into action, right? Your thoughts. So if I can get you to think to pay yourself first, and have you focus on that and change your habits so that you're actually paying yourself first, that's huge. So whatever mechanisms that exist, products, software, a 401k, as you and I were talking about off air, yes. A 401k has its downside, especially for us in the crypto space, but it also has its upside. And the biggest upside to a 401k is that it's a force-fed program. It is automatically deducted out. So in the day and the time that we're in right now, where it's so hard for young people to save, if that's the only way you can do it, then I would say do that versus do nothing, because 401k, as bad as they may be, and a lot of people's mind as far as their ROI or APY, they still are a forced fed program, right? They automatically deduct. And yes, that's what you have to do, is you have to find a system that is either you manually paying yourself first. So in the crypto space, that's going in to Coinbase and buying your weekly Bitcoin for $25 or $10 or $5 or whatever it is. Yep. But you just go on there and you do that. You just buy it, pay yourself first. Or you could, if you have a 401k, you work, you have a W-2, you work, you sign up for that. You got to do something that pays you first. So we can break down the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we can even break down the good, bad, and the ugly, have layers of great ways to invest, and the smartest way to invest, and the best way to save and tax savings and all this stuff. The first thing we have to do is get people paying themselves first, change their habits. So
create that habit. Yep.
Create that habit, that paradigm shift of, hey, I'm getting my check, I'm paying myself first. Before you can have personal finances, well, you're always going to have personal finances in that you're going to have bills to pay, but so that you're in control of it, you're actually controlling it and managing your personal finances, and they're not in control of you, right? You have to pay yourself first.
That's
you
how
have
most
to have
people
the money
operate, right?
Right.
The expenses control them. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the way it was when I was young too. I mean, it's very difficult. It's some of these principles are still very good principles, but the first thing you have to do is take action and pay yourself first. Now, over the next 5 years, you're going to have some money to manage then. So when we're talking about a personal financial plan, you got to begin with clear goals, right? You have to set out what your goals are. And we talked about that in the mindset a little bit in the mindset video.
Yes.
But that would be the first step of a good financial plan is clear, concise goals. And I would think the next would be cash flow management, your budget. A budget is huge. You have to know what your revenue is and what your expenses are. You have to see that. And the top line, the first thing on your expenses should be you. Whatever that dollar amount is. So before your mortgage, before your insurance, before your utilities, your first expense is you. And if that's $25 a week, $50 a week, $5 a week. If you're more wealthy, you're making more money, $1,000, whatever the number is, right. You should put that number first. That's your first expense.
You're right to say that that's a habit that needs to be developed, because it's not something, I mean, again, you and I are the same age here. So we come from the school of or at least I did anyway. You pay everything else. If you got some money left over, well, hey, congratulations, you get to go play with your money today. So creating the habit of paying yourself first, again, like I said, it was something when we were on that live stream that kind of hit me in the face, like, yeah, I don't do that. So I've really tried to create that habit. But here's the thing. Sometimes habits are difficult to form, even if you're doing them for a period of time. Like last time we talked, you were talking about the habit of working out. And I've been trying to be really good about that. But I got to tell you, there are days that I just can't do it. And the same thing goes with the paying myself first. There are weeks where I'm like, man, it's so tight this week. I need to be able to just pay this. What advice would you give to that maybe younger generation? Because the younger generation has the opportunity to have those little bits of money incrementally grow. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but to help them to really develop and maintain that habit.
Well, first of all, if you're a motivational speaker, if you're a finance guru, if you're in the pit at the Chicago exchange, all of us battle the same demons, all of us. So I don't want to like try to set myself aside and say, hey man, this is the guy's got it all figured out. I will never tell you that, because I really don't believe that in my head, because all of us have fallen down on our strategies. And if somebody says they never have, I don't believe that. I mean, we're all human. Right. We're all human, right? And we all have different life events that occur, tragedies that occur, accidents that occur, loss of a job, loss of your spouse's job. In the military, you get deployed someplace different. There's just life stuff that derail you from good habits. So that's life. What you do is you just try to not, the thing in your head, the paradigm shift you got to make with that is just don't miss 2 in a row. So things happen, you got tight that week, but you have to say, I'm not going to miss 2 in a row. Like that's got to be something that you have to just push yourself forward, manifest and say, look, this did happen. It's okay. It doesn't mean I'm going to quit. doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I'm still on path, and you just don't miss 2 in a row. And so whether that be your eating habits or your workout habits or your financial habits or at your job, or even if you're working on a relationship, say with your wife or your spouse or your kids, one of the things as a father, I never ever wanted to discipline my kids in anger, and I didn't. And because I was disciplined in anger, right? So you say something to my mom, she's smacking the piss out of you right now, man. I mean, wham, it's like, that's the way it was in my generation, right? So I always thought as a child, here's a big adult. What'd you just do that to me for? So with my habits, right? With my mindset, my thoughts, you have your kids. One of the things that I said, I'm never going to smack my kids or hit my kids. And, I'm not going to discipline them in any way when I'm angry. The worst I will do is yell at it, like you need to get to your room or something like, and so my point is it takes work. It takes work. You're not out. You don't come out of the womb that way, man. Especially when you conditioned in this conditioning as a child one way, to try to break that paradigm or have a paradigm shift and do something different is very difficult. It's very difficult. So we all struggle as humans with that, is what I would say. And if you do fall down, you just don't do it twice. So get back up, start again, and don't beat yourself up over falling down that one time. Thoughts are very powerful. Thoughts are everything. So
that's a good point. That's a good point. Because often, again, I can speak for me. Often, I'll be like, dang, why? What was wrong with you? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I try not to linger there because I know that's not a good mindset to be in. But I mean, hey, we're human. We end up there inevitably. The idea of making it something, because as you pointed out with like a 401k or an IRA, for example, you're able to have your employer go ahead and put that money in automatically. So they are actually forcing you to take it out of your paycheck before you actually get your paycheck. And to bring that into the crypto space, you mentioned it briefly that, you could go on Coinbase and set like maybe an automatic withdrawal, automatic purchase. I think that's a great idea. I also recently came across, and I don't know if you have any experience with this, Billy, having a payroll deduction. So for W-2 employees, for example, you, instead of sending all of it to your checking account, you can send it to part of it, split it up, and send part of it to, and I use Bitcoin Well is what I started using. So I send literally $30 out of every paycheck will go to Bitcoin Well. They buy the Bitcoin for me and then send it to my designated address. Have you dealt with anything like that, or what do you think about that kind of process to relate it to the crypto space?
Hey man, I love that kind of process. So, but see, taking the action to set that up was the big step, right? So all the younger folks that are struggling right now, cost of living so high, you have to take that action step. So Bitcoin Well, I don't use it, never, until you told me about it earlier. I never heard of it, but that would be perfect as long as it's an automatic thing.
Yeah.
If you can't discipline yourself, like we were talking about, look, you get your paycheck, you pay yourself first. That could look like it goes into your bank account. Your bank account is connected to Coinbase. You go over to Coinbase, as Piper would do, click on advance, Coinbase advance, buy your $100 of Bitcoin or $50 of Bitcoin. And that's a manual habit, right? That you just do. But if you can't do that, if you can't get yourself to that point, then the sacrifice is, set up on Coinbase, have it automatically sweep DCA, automatically sweep weekly, and it just comes right out of your bank every week. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. It just pays yourself first automatically. You've taken that one action step, and it's going to do it every single week, and you don't have to worry about it. Now, that is a great way to get started. Now, once you start really paying attention to your finances and you start really understanding, hey, I can actually buy this Bitcoin a little cheaper. Once you become familiar with the Coinbase app, you can start using some of the advanced features on Coinbase, and you can see that you can actually buy it at spot price, basically. But to get started, to pay yourself first, whatever you have to do, whether that's setting up with your employer a 401k or setting up with Bitwell, as you were talking about, whatever the application is, do it. Do that.
Yes.
To get yourself paid first, because you need wealth to manage. If you don't have any wealth, how are you going to manage it, right? You got to begin managing as if you already have it. You got to take the action steps, right? So back to your larger question, a personal financial plan, pay yourself first, set your goals out. You got to have clear goals, whether that's, you want a new house, you want $1 million by this age. The more specific you can be, the better off your plan is going to be. And then you'd have to sit down and do a budget, a cash flow budget. So a cash flow budget is a little bit different in that you're just putting in all your revenue. So maybe you and your wife's paycheck, what the net amount is coming into your bank, and then the listing of your expenses. And the top item should be yourself, and then your house payment, your car payment, your expenses. And then you get down to the bottom and you see, hey, I'm bringing in whatever the number is, $1,500 a week, or let's just make it $1,000 a week. That's $4,000 a month. And you look at your expenses, and your expenses are $3,900 a month. So you have $100 left over,
Right.
I also would say that cash flow budget should be real. So for instance, spend the time to understand that you are buying in a month 22 Starbucks coffees at $4.75 and put them on there. At least once you do that, you are able to see a true reflection of what your expenses are. Don't try to skinny it up and think, I really don't spend that much, because you probably do. And you need that snapshot. You need that good, true reflection. Then later, when you're analyzing that, you can decide where you want to cut at. And of course, after that, your financial goals, pay yourself first. I would say that you need to begin working on your emergency fund, right? Having at least, a lot of financial planners will say 6 months, but hey, if you can get it to 3 months where you have 3 months of your expenses in a savings account or in an account, we as crypto people, it's hard for us to even say savings accounts anymore. It's like saying CDs, right? Like, who would be in a CD? But I like to go back a layer. Whatever it is that you can put it into that allows you to have 3 months savings. I would even say if it's cash under your mattress, right? So I don't want to get into like the different ways to do that, because as long as you're doing it and you have your 3 months, that's huge, because there's so many different ways to get there. You could use your DCA and see that balance is there. You could put it in a CD. You can put it in a savings account. You can put it in a checking account. There's so many ways, but you definitely need to have liquid 3 months of your expenses saved up. That's in case something happens and you lose your job or there's transitionary period in your life. We all have that. That's real world.
Nope, that's a fact. That's a fact. I guess I should probably inject at this point. In the description of this video, you will see a link for a Google Sheet, which will break down a lot of what we're talking about, give you some of these points, as well as any other resources that we may mention during the course of this video. So at the end of this video, go ahead and click that link and check that out, download it, print it, whatever works for you. We left off talking about the emergency fund, creating the budget, having the emergency fund, and automating stuff where possible. I don't know, for me, automating stuff where possible, that makes the most sense. And what else would you say would be a good step for, again, somebody who may not have this habit already?
Yeah. So another key component of analyzing your finances would be your debt management. And what I mean by that is you got to really work to pay your high interest credit card off first. So you got to
Yeah.
prioritize, right? So if you have credit cards, everybody has credit cards. So
Yes.
a lot of the young people have to put a lot on their credit cards and then they end up with bigger balances. And what I find just alarming is that, okay, you are in the situation where you are, as long as you're taking steps in your career path and your personal finances to get you out of that place. Hey, man, that's life. We all got to struggle our way, bootstrap our way up. But you can do it a little smarter in that pay attention to your credit card interest rate and why are you paying 21%, 29%, 25, 28, 24.99 when there's other cards out there that allow you to roll that balance over to say a 4.99 or 7.99. I have no shame in saying back when I was in my young, a lot of 0% interest rate offers come to the mailbox, right?
Yep.
So I have a $10,000 credit card balance. I'm paying, 12%. I get a 0% no annual fee credit card offer in the mail that allows right on the postcard that was sent back in those days that says 0% for 6 months or your first year, no annual fee. Open that up, switch that balance over, and now
Yep.
pay 0% on it. And if
Yep.
you're working on your career path, you just bought yourself 6 months or 12 months. And
Yep.
I just don't see enough, in my humble opinion, people looking at that and saying, wow, I'm going to take advantage of this 0% no annual fee for 6 months. So debt management would be another key component of a good financial plan, in my humble opinion. Again, we're not financial advisors. I was a financial advisor at one time, way back in the 80s, for a short period of time after I got my series license and things. I did do that. So I am very acutely aware of these principles. However, I'm not licensed to, sit
Yes.
down with somebody and give them, individual personal financial planning advice for sure. But these principles, you can Google these principles. These principles are time tested principles and they work.
Amen. That's a fact. Before we started this actual recording of this video, Billy and I were talking off screen, and one of the things we were talking about was, because I do it all the time and I wasn't really thinking about it until we were just talking about credit cards right now, is that you can get credit cards that you can use that will pay you rewards in, like, Bitcoin, for example. So I use the Gemini credit card and I get Bitcoin back between 1% and 3%, depending on the purchases. So I'm going to use the credit card anyway to do my normal everyday, whatever I need to do. Makes sense. Why not get a little bit back? Have you used any of those, Billy? Or is there any that you would recommend to people who might be looking to go down that road?
So I got wrapped up in BlockFi and it went down, right? So
Uh,
I was lucky. I used my credit card the right way. So BlockFi was paying rewards in Bitcoin and I use a credit card for a lot, right? So in my business,
I was going to say you
I
have
put my
business
hotel
expenses
rooms, my
probably.
meals, and I
Yeah.
get points, right? And I use those for mostly either like Marriott. I gather all these points up. So I opened up way back the BlockFi account, and then wasn't too long, and they went belly up. So, but all I lost on that was the reward points in Bitcoin, right? So I had gained all these points in Bitcoin, or all the Bitcoin from, and when they went under, that's what I ended up losing.
And I appreciate this conversation about the credit cards. I mean, end of the day, they're an important piece of the way we survive here in today's economy. But speaking of credit card debt, I mean, we see reports coming out every month and it just seems to keep going up, that Americans and their defaults on their credit card debts are just rising and rising and rising. At the end of the day, we would like to give you the best information possible to help your personal financial situation. So making sure that you're not out over your skis with regard to credit card balances is very important. Now, life happens and you may end up there. If that's the case, Billy, and somebody finds themselves there, what suggestions would you give to these people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say in my 20s, I was there. So I'm not exempt from that either, right? It's probably gonna happen to real world hardworking Americans right now. And so what you do is you have to manage that debt. So debt management as part of your financial plan is very, very important. So when I say debt management, that means, look, you have a credit card, you have a balance on it, you can't seem to get it down, you're paying the interest expense a month. That's it, every month. What do? Well, you start with trying to change your career path so that you can earn more, so that you can get out of that situation as far as a permanent remedy, or you find another income source so that you can get out of that situation. That's step one. Step two, though, while you're doing that, you still every month get the credit card payment, right? So while you're doing that is you actively seek out, and there's tons of websites that are available for the best credit cards out there, and you'll find 0% interest for 6 months, for 12 months on some of these cards. No annual fee, 0% interest, 6 months. You take that balance, you apply for that new card, you sweep that balance over to that new card. Now you're paying 0% interest for 6 months. You actively manage that debt. So if you find yourself in that situation, there are techniques and tools that you can utilize, but you have to take action. So you actively managing your debt and getting yourself out of there is on you. You got to have personal responsibility. You know, all of us can look at the world and say it's a bad place and, you know, I got bad luck. And I would tell you those thoughts are dangerous.
Yes.
You have to be grateful for everything you do have. So when you start feeling down or you feel like the world's against you, you just have all these bad things that happen to you. You have to then, in that moment, take inventory of everything that you do have and work yourself out of that mental anguish, because your thoughts are powerful. And so,
Yes.
so you all that is personal responsibility, though, right? And if you need a little boost, well, that's what Billy Coattails is here for, right? I mean, that's our mission, is to givers gain, is to remind you. Maybe you learned this 10 years ago and you forgot. Here we are reminding you about it. Maybe you are familiar with the principles, you heard about them, but you never put them in action. And maybe you did put them in action, but you got off the path, right? Life happens. And now here we are reminding you. But also maybe you've never heard of these principles and you need somebody to teach them to you. That's what you do here on this channel, Keith. That's what we do over at Billy Coattails. Yeah. So hopefully this gets in the hands of the right people. We're just trying to help. No strings attached. We're not shilling anything or selling anything. We just want to put this information out there to the people.
Agreed. And again, for those who are not familiar with Billy Coattails, if you didn't go check it out after the first video I did with Billy, well, shame on you. No, I'm kidding. But you definitely need to do that. Link is in the description. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. Billy, what have we missed? What do we want to tell these people as we're starting to wrap this thing up?
I mean, this is a good first step, right? So pay yourself first. Well, your goals, take time to set out your goals. Okay. Pay yourself first, manage your debt actively. Then you get into the emergency fund, get your 30 months going. And then there's a whole ton of other strategies that go into retirement, tax strategies,
Yes.
different layers that, you know, estate planning. There's all these different types of ways to protect your wealth, you know, creating an LLC. You know, what a lot of people don't realize is I believe everybody should have a company. The reason you should have a company is because there's so many things that you buy for your household that you can actually write off. I'm in my basement, in which I've turned into a YouTube studio. Okay. I get to write off the square footage because I'm using this to create content with my business. So that's such a benefit, right? So if I have to clean my cabinets, if I have to buy rags, well, I'd buy rags anyways, right? Well, now
Right.
I get to write off
Write
expenses
it off.
like that. There's so much when you start talking about a true financial plan. But to keep it simple, set up your goals, do your cash flow budget, revenue, expenses, put yourself first as an expense, get your emergency fund set up 3 months, and manage your debt, manage your credit card balances, manage your credit card balances. And so if you can just do those 4 things to get started, then I think we could get into a lot of other strategies that go deeper and peel back the onion a little bit that could really help you with your savings, with your financial plan, with your expenses and things like that.
I'm going to give it over to Billy one more time here and say, Billy, what is the end game? What should these, how do they wrap it all up? How do they put it in that package in the bow?
The key to me is your mindset. And that's why I like the fact that you started with the mindset video, because you have to put yourself in the mindset to actively manage your finances. There's nobody that's going to do it for you. You have to take control. You have to take ownership. You have to control your own finances. And that could mean a paradigm shift. That could mean what we said: create your goals, create your budget, your cash flow budget, be in charge of it, pay yourself first, and try to get your savings plan. But you have to change your mindset and actively manage it. So that means what? Taking action, creating better habits. Take control of it, actively manage it, just like you were talking about at the beginning with habits and working out and exercise. So sometimes you fall down. It's okay. Try not to miss the second time. Work to not have 2 misses in a row. It's okay. Life gets in the way. So we brought up some great points: how to manage your debt, especially credit card debt. Do these things, like pay attention and actively manage it. And that begins with your thoughts. That begins with your mindset. And I think if you do that, you're going to see that in 6 months, you're going to be in a way better position than you are today.
Yes. And again, remember, this wasn't meant to be all encompassing. It was meant to start you down the path for you to do the work like Billy just mentioned. Billy, thanks for being here again today. Thank you for imparting all that wisdom. I really, really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime, Keith.
All right. Well, you say that, but I'm going to be calling you. So I hope you got some great information from Crypto Billy. And don't forget, all of the information to follow Crypto Billy is in the description below. All right, let's get to our second guest, Jimmy Jim from Billy Goat Tales. He's going to talk some of his personal finance strategies and give you some things to think about for yours. Let's get to it. Okay, welcome back to part 2 of this video on personal finance. This time, I'm joined again by Jimmy Jim from Billy Goat Tales. Welcome, Jim. Thanks for coming back. Appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Oh, glad to be here, man. Had a good time on the last one. See if we can have some more fun this time.
All right, I'm psyched about that. All right, well, let's get to it. I guess I would ask you if you were, because again, these videos are meant for the newbie, maybe people who don't necessarily have a background in finance, maybe never even made a budget before. If someone like that asked you, hey, how could I, like, what steps do I got to take? What should I be looking at? What should I be doing? How would you guide them to start them to get their personal finances in some kind of order?
Assuming this person had nothing going on, no retirement, no 401k, no IRA, no crypto, nothing. I mean, literally they're,
starting from
maybe
proverbial scratch.
Exactly. First thing I'm going to say is be patient. You've got a tough road in the beginning, and you got to live it. I know for myself, going through a couple of divorces kind of left me in some bad financial situations, the latter being the worst. I want to say I had to do that again, but to a certain degree, I had to do it again, right?
Yeah, right.
And you always want as much of your money, working for you at all times, right? And that can be tough. I was going through my divorce right when the last crypto bull market was taking off, and I wasn't in yet. I had a buddy of mine that did really well. He was egging me on to get in, get in, get in, and I'm like, I want to, but kind of got this little life situation going on over
Yeah,
here,
yeah, life. Right.
making things difficult and lawyers wanting money and all that kind of stuff. But I was able to catch, I'd say, from right at the peak, tailing off, and I still made out great. I made a lot of money on the last run, and getting into a position to be able to do that was hard, right? I mean, I had credit card debt at that time because I was paying lawyers all my cash, and uh,
Sure.
it mounted up quick. So that was kind of my first thing that I wanted to take care of, to just try to level set everything, get back right, was alleviate any credit card debt. Up to that point, I didn't have a whole lot of credit card debt. I don't like carrying it, especially now. I run a lot of things through credit cards on a monthly basis to get the points and 5%
Sure.
off or whatever it might be. But at the end of the month, I pay it all off. I'm kind of the belief that I wouldn't go as far to say if you're putting it on a credit card, you can't afford it. But if you're putting it on a credit card and can't pay it off at the end of the month, you can't afford it. I'll
No,
take that statement a
fair
little bit
enough.
further, right? So, that's the first thing. You got to get your personal finances right before you're really ever going to be in a position, especially if money's tight. It's probably tight because you've got a lot of credit card debt. But that would be the first thing I would do, alleviate as much debt as possible. I mean, whether it be cars, drive that car for an extra 3 or 4 years or five, for that matter. You probably won't be able to pay off the house, but hopefully you got in to that situation with a low interest rate. So that's
Right.
cheap money. I mean, if you're doing it today,
Yeah,
but you
forget
can always
about it.
refinance and
Mm,
do things like that. But I would say, at the kind of the ground level, and kind of going back to our last conversation talking about a good foundation, I do contribute to my 401k up to my company match. All right. So I think my
sure.
company's 4%. I'm going to put that 4% in just because I'm going to double my money on a monthly
Yep.
basis. I mean, that's free money. And, I guess this kind of goes along with, paying yourself. You hear people say that a lot, pay yourself, pay yourself. Somewhere between 10 and 15% of every check you get should be going to a fund that you can invest. And that's, probably the first hurdle is getting in that mindset of, every time I get some money, I'm going to scrape a little bit and put it aside and be very disciplined about that and not touch anything above and beyond that. Right.
Let's be
Uh,
honest, it ain't easy to do. I mean,
it's not.
especially if you're not in the habit of doing it.
I mean, it's not, but just be disciplined for a couple of months, and after a couple of months, it'll become natural. It was
Right.
pretty easy for me to get back into that groove after my last divorce. And then the next thing I started looking at is, okay, I've got my 401k, that's 4% pre-tax that I'm putting into that, which is not a lot.
Right. In the
I'm
big
not even
scheme. Yeah.
sure what that number looks like for me on the monthly, but it's not a lot. In my mind, my 401k is my safety net. I'm not looking at it as that as my primary source of retirement income or anything like that. I mean, that is all else fails. I've got
I've
that,
got that. Okay. Yep. Fair enough.
So then over, a couple of years ago, I opened up an IRA, a stock backed IRA. And then I also opened up a crypto backed IRA.
Okay.
But the plan with that is basically, if it's bull market, shift funds over to that IRA account that's crypto backed, buy there, buy low, sell high, no
Hmm.
taxes on those gains. Bear market comes along, then shifting some of those funds back over to a stock-backed IRA, and then holding on to my Bitcoin, but then putting some of that into gold, in that same iTrust account, so you can do gold, silver, and then actually a very long list from everything from Bitcoin to meme coins now on iTrust. I was really surprised to
Really?
see them add so
Man.
many different options in the iTrust account. Did really good during the bear market on some stocks. I took money out of that and moved it over into Bitcoin. I bought Bitcoin at 30 grand. It was initial seed of, I think it was either six or $8,000 that I put into the stock account, and then it ran up. Took a big chunk of that money, moved it over into my crypto back account, was able to get Bitcoin at 30 grand in that account. Just kind of moving funds around between those two accounts, was kind of my foundation. That 401k, having the two IRA accounts, that is kind of what I would call my foundation for my personal finances. Then we get into the real crypto stuff, right? Then I've got more money in crypto than I do any of the IRA accounts combined, you know.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
I understand.
I got a lot of eggs in that basket.
Yeah. Maybe even yeah. I understand.
But I think that's a great strategy to use is while I can always access the crypto accounts, and I can liquidate that and have cash available, but actually putting some cash into some things that you can't just get out, it's a good safety net for myself. I want to, go crazy and spend 10 grand on sports cards. Well, I can't touch that money over there. It has to come from either liquidating crypto or, just what I have, from working fiat jobs and whatnot. And that kind of goes back to the previous conversation of you've got to be disciplined. You got to quit drinking $7 coffees and,
Yeah.
eating fast food,
Yep.
learn 3 or 4 recipes, get good at them and eat that. It's so much cheaper to eat like that. And that's all I did. After the divorce, I was, liquid cash. I didn't have a lot. My 401k got drained.
Sure.
And that's why I'm crypto heavy but I'm just trying to make up some ground. You got to be patient. Those accounts don't grow real fast in the beginning,
Right.
but as they mature and things start compounding, toward the end is when it really starts paying off.
Sure.
You
And that's
really,
when you
really start
actually have
stacking.
some wealth to manage per se. Yeah.
Right. Part of that target is, I think sitting down and really saying to yourself, what is it that you want out of retirement? What does that look like for you? If you're fortunate enough to do that at a younger age in your 40s or younger for that matter, you're going to have a much bigger balance in those accounts to sustain 30 or 40 years. Now, and that's not to say you're just going to sit there and drain accounts. You're not going to be doing other things to make money, along
Right.
the way. But, for me, I just want to be able to live like I live every day. And I know as I get older, a lot of the things that a lot of things I did in my 20s, I don't really want to do in my 50s,
Amen.
So I know that, internal need or want to spend money on whatever it might be diminishes, with age. I mean, at least for most people it does. Those priorities are going to change, and that's not to say either that, what you sit down and say today to yourself about retirement, that's not something totally different in 10 years,
Sure.
um, and different situations in life are going to, throw you all kinds of curveballs, and you need to be disciplined in your plan, but know your plan's going to change over time. But you just can't get weak on the overall plan. It's not like, all right, I got into crypto at the bottom of the market and I'm in this bull market now, and maybe it fizzles out and doesn't do that great. Well, am I just going to throw crypto aside in the next bear market and take that money and do something else with it? Probably not. I'm probably
Right.
going to wait for the bottom and start buying back in again. And the more institutional money, the more adoption.
Well,
it's gonna start leveling out, you know.
it's funny you say that, because I was gonna ask. So again, where this is more toward the newbie who might be coming into cryptocurrency, I'm gonna guess that most people have no patience, so they probably have some cryptocurrency by the time they're watching this video, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I gotta figure, I gotta figure out something." So, but if they don't, or if they have very little, where do you think they should start focusing? Because, like you said, life happens. Should they start, even though they're looking to go into crypto, do you think? Or should they start in the more traditional sector, even though, I mean, we know what's happening in the TradFi sector. We know what's happening with the US dollar.
I would say if you're starting out, don't have any crypto. And it all comes, you just got to compound and reinvesting, right? I mean, don't make 10 grand and then go blow 9 grand, you know.
Right.
You know, pay yourself that 10 or 15%, you know, that's what you get. Everything else goes back into some type of a working asset.
Gotcha.
Um,
I keep pulling you all over the place. I'm so sorry. But what do you think of, how would you fit maybe gold or silver in there?
well, I
The way
mean, I
you were
think that's
saying
in
it.
that kind of that foundational. Maybe you make that 10 grand and then take half of that and then boom, you know, move it into something slow and steady that
Yeah.
you can compound on, you know, every time you make that 10 grand again, you know, and then put a little aside, put a little aside, get some balance started. You don't want to be just risk on with everything, you know, one false
Right.
move and
Right.
everything's gone, right? Some of this stuff to me is pretty is common sense, right? But you know, people have an appetite for risk, and they want to, you know, throw those Hail Marys and get burned, and then they get a bad taste in their
Ugh.
mouth, and they don't like crypto no more. And now we're going down that road. So, you know, patience
Yes.
is everything. You know, time in the market. We talked about that last time. Was time in the market.
Yes.
You know, start with your risk off assets, no matter what it is. If it's a stock, you know, buy a blue chip. You know, buy something that's just going to pay some dividends. You know, if you're going into crypto, you know, and you're just starting out, I would stay on the layer ones, you know. I mean, that's going to be you know, your top 20 tokens out there. And then as you're making money, then you can start sliding that stuff into moderate and, you know, heavy risk type assets. But you got to get that foundation established if you're going to be successful. That way, one false move doesn't wipe everything out. I'm all
No.
about having safety nets nowadays. You know, that's something
Well,
I
the
did
older you
not
get,
live
that
with,
makes sense.
you know,
You
so
know,
much of my
things are,
life. You know, I lived paycheck to paycheck for a
yeah.
long time, 20, 25 plus years. And, you know, there's now I'm in a position where, all right, you know, I can set a couple of layers of safety underneath me, you know, that way when those life issues just decide to pop up and throw you a curveball, you're ready for it.
Well,
And you've got to have that rainy day account too. That's something else
I
people
was
don't have a lot
literally
of.
just going to ask, what are you thinking about an emergency fund? How much? How long? You know, please go. You are already heading there. Go ahead.
You know, in the beginning, it's tough, right? I mean, I would say in the beginning, at minimum 1 month. If you lose your job and you're a decent person that has a good work ethic, you should be able to find a job in a month. Ideally, though, I would say 3 to 6 months is really where you want to be living, if all possible.
Right.
That just makes you sleep good at night. You know, if I
Sure.
lose my job, all right, well, I've got 6 months to find a new one. And you know, another thing I do in my personal finances is like a vehicle. I will always finance that thing out 5 to 7 years, but I always pay in at a 4 year rate. If I have to finance anything, which I don't finance anything anymore, I mean, it's vehicles and house, right? But I like to extend out, you know, anything that I am financing, extend it out for the longest period possible. Especially with vehicles, I put a lot of money down too. I mean, I don't buy vehicles if I'm not putting, you know, $10,000 or $20,000 down. That way, you know, one, you don't ever end up upside down, you know, on your vehicle,
No. Good
and
point.
then having that 7 year loan, but paying in at a 4 or 5 year rate. Well, you know, there's another safety net for you. Something goes wrong, you can always fall back on that 7 year payment, which will be half of what you're used to, you know, normally paying. And then when you're normally paying, you know, that 4 year rate on the 7 year loan, Well, I mean, you're saving yourself money there too, because you're not paying interest for as long as you would have just paying the minimum, monthly payment.
I think I better take a quick second just to kind of interject a couple of points. Jimmy
Sure.
has mentioned a couple of times about a previous conversation that we've had. Now, on the in case that you have come directly to this video and did not follow everything in series, the video he's referring to is one that he and I did right prior to this one, where he spoke quite eloquently, to be honest with you, about risk tolerance and understanding risk management, and went into some great points. That video, there'll be a link in the description, but if you have not already seen that, there's a reason I put that one before this one. So please go back and give that a listen. You will find all kinds of great nuggets in there, and a lot of what he's saying right now might make a little bit more sense because he's kind of prepped some of those conversations in that particular video as well. Also, there will be links, I mentioned it earlier in this video, in the description to Google Docs that will give you some breakdowns. Again, that'll give you a strategy to follow with basic investing, creating a budget, an emergency fund, that kind of thing. Information, honestly, you could Google up yourself, but I tried to put it in a nice, easy to find, easy to check it off Google Doc for you. So make sure you're checking that out. Links are in the description. Let's keep this going down the road, because this particular video, just to give you a placement in where this is going to land on everything, is almost at the end of the first module of the training session that I have. And I kind of put it to the end because I know at this point people are probably, they got that itch going. If they have been trying to follow this series, they're like, okay, I want me some crypto now,
Right.
So with that thought in mind, what would you give them for advice? Because I gotta believe that there are gonna be some people that are gonna be like, oh yeah, enough is enough of this, man. I'm going to Coinbase right now, or wherever they're going. So could you kind of speak to those people a little bit?
At the end of this bull market, I won't hold anything other than Bitcoin. I'm not going to ever sell my Bitcoin. That's just creating a tax event. Another
True.
video.
Yes,
Uh,
it is. Yes.
the way I look at Bitcoin is almost like real estate. I mean, you're putting some money into this thing. It has proven over 13 years to do nothing but pretty much go up when you zoom out and look at everything from a 40,000-foot view,
Right.
and hang on to it and borrow against that Bitcoin. Aave does it. And there's a few different projects where you can borrow against your crypto. No different than going to the bank and putting your car up as collateral, or taking a second mortgage out on your home. It's the same thing. You can get the money and you're not creating that tax event. Now,
Yes.
another thing I would do, if you're starting out fresh and really have zero other assets, the first thing I would actually do is probably set up a trust, and then have that
Something we
trust
talked about a
own,
little bit. Yep.
have that trust own a holdings company. That holdings company is where your crypto lives, is within that LLC. That way, you're paying a flat corporate tax on any profits. And the beautiful part about that is, well, a company has expenses, right? And then that's, you put your car in the company name. You start putting everything in that company
Right.
name. I'm trying to get as much stuff out of my own name as possible, just for the simple fact that if someone sues me, all of my assets are protected. And that
Yep.
could be as something as just going dumb as going to the grocery store and I end up T-boning and hurting somebody bad. And, that's something that doesn't take a lot of effort. You can probably get that structure done for, I mean, if you really want a lawyer to review it, I mean, you're going to spend probably 2 or 3,000 bucks getting the trust established and forming a new LLC, holdings company LLC, and then anything you do after that, which is exactly what I've done. Yeah, trust owns holdings, and then the holdings company does nothing other than own Well, it owns my equity in my company. It owns the trading card business, which all rolls up between the trading cards and Billy Goat Tales and all of that. That rolls up under W Entertainment Group, which is another LLC that lives underneath the holdings company. So I have a bank account set up for that. I can put expenses against that money. I can put expenses against the holdings company. And then the beautiful part is when I die, none of it goes to probate, because I
Right.
have it all in the
Right.
trust. I save really my son, who I'm leaving everything to, a lot of headache on that front. All the creditors will show up. They're going to want their little piece of the pie,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
uh,
yep.
and, and you're going to protect yourself from those kind of things. So that would be the first thing I would do, is establish that trust, establish a holdings company, and then start buying crypto out of the bank account for that holdings company. And then, from that point, start moving cars, houses, whatever you have that's a, significant asset into that holdings company. I mean, it's a great strategy. It'll save you a ton on taxes. I mean, since I've done that, man, I want to say my tax bill's gone down 50%, because it's
Right.
not all me, my individual, it's their companies. And all I've
Right.
got to do is file on my W 2. I should have done this stuff a long time ago. I just didn't. But man, if you can get that in place, and, because there's a learning curve there too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Every
Hell
time
yeah.
I go to buy something, I got to stop and think, all right, is this a business expense or is this a personal expense? Which has helped me. I mean, it's kind of slowed me down from just making impulse buys on things, just because you've got to keep those lines between those accounts. You can't be moving cash in and out willy nilly. You got to back things up with invoices and things like that. But man, for the effort that you have to put in, you open a bank account, open you up a basic QuickBooks account, attach those two things together, and then hire an accountant and give him access to it.
And there you
I
go.
mean, it's that
And
simple.
yeah, and folks, listen, this is not the first time you're hearing this. If you did watch the last video with Jimmy, we talked about this in that video. I've been watching this whole video. Crypto Billy mentioned it in the first part of this video. He mentioned it in our mindset video. Daniel Diaz mentioned it in the What is Money video. Are you sensing the theme here, folks? So listen, we're going to put together a much more advanced video where we talk and look into this stuff much more deeply. Jimmy, I think what we need to tell everybody at this point where we're talking personal finances is consider starting out correctly. Does that sound right?
Oh,
Like,
well, yeah. I mean,
set yourself
anytime you
up
can
for
start off
that
on the right
kind of
foot,
success. Yeah. To
I mean,
be
it's going to save you money in the long run. That's for sure.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
it's going to be a capital outlay right now. I mean, like you said, if you're going to have lawyers look it all over, a couple of grand here, LLCs alone, like what, 400 or 500 bucks, depending on what state you live in. So there is some capital outlay, but I don't know. Let's put it this way. I'm telling you from experience, I did not start this way. And I am very sad I did not start this way, because now, to me, looking at it from where I'm currently at, I almost feel like I'm playing a little bit of catch up. So the information that Jimmy just gave you, man, and that's why I said, Jim, I think it's trying to get them started on the right foot and moving in the right direction for like hitting the ground running with that success.
well,
So
I would definitely say it is the way to go. You should do that. And a great resource for me personally was Mark Kohler. He's on YouTube. He does a lot of videos around forming LLCs and tax. Also, friend of the show over at Decrypted Tax, Ernest Lee. He's a great resource. I mean, he can help you from A to Z. That's one really nice thing about Ernest, is that he can help you form the LLCs, get everything set up right from the get go, and do all of your taxes, one stop shop. Because I can tell you, folks, you do not want the IRS coming down on you. I've
amen.
been through. I've been through an audit. It happened when I sold the company. Now, all of my stuff was in order, and my tax guy pretty much handled most of it, but it was pretty nerve-wracking
I was gonna say that's
still.
stressful. I'm sorry.
Just knowing they're looking at you and they're looking hard, and you just don't want to be in that situation. You really don't want to be in that situation if you've been skimping on taxes, man. You pay your taxes. I can't stress that enough. I've seen people get completely wrecked over $20,000 or $30,000 stock sale, made a mistake on their tax return, and when they came with their hand out, it turned into this person getting their wages garnished. So if you don't want to work for a whole week and get $200 or $300, pay your taxes is all I got to say.
There you go, folks. You can take just that away. There it is right there.
Yes, it ain't fun and it sucks. I mean, for the last 20 something years, I'm sitting there looking at, what I've paid in on my W-2, and then I'm looking over here at the tax guy stuff, and I gotta pay how much more?
Yeah.
It's
I think I would like to look at one more thing. For those who have watched this series in order, you know that several videos back, BC Poor Corp and I talked about crypto history and the history of the space. And part of that history of the space was what is known as alt season. And as of this moment in time, as we're recording this video, and I know I'm taking Jimmy down a little bit of a path right now, I'm sorry, but we haven't really experienced that. I mean, it's been pretty much strength on Bitcoin right now, and that's been the way, and gold's been ripping. I mean, it's alts, not so much. What do you think about the whole idea that's going around the space right now, Jimmy, that we might not see altcoin season as the traditional altcoin season, and maybe what these new companies, like these companies on NASDAQ, like MicroStrategy, who have started to adopt the Michael Saylor strategy of putting Bitcoin on their balance sheets, have they become the new alt cycle? I mean, because these companies are all doing well. What do you think about that? Again, I know I'm taking you down a path here, but I'm interested to hear what you think.
For sure, this cycle is different. Okay. I mean, we can't deny that to a certain degree. We've talked about this on Billy Goat Tales numerous times, and I'm still kind of floating in the same boat, kind of going back. I think we talked about it last time on, I still kind of feel like we're in this super cycle. I feel like things are going to run much, much longer than people are thinking, but it's not gonna have that parabolic move that everyone's waiting for. I think it's going to be a slower trickle up. I think there's an order of business that has to happen. Bitcoin needs to do its thing, but I think where things are different is that you've got so many people in Bitcoin, or I should say, so many institutions in Bitcoin right now, that I don't see BlackRock or Fidelity or any of those guys rolling off of Bitcoin into Ethereum and working their way all the way down, into freaking meme coins. I just don't see that happening. These are smart people. These are TradFi people. They live over in the slow and steady world, right?
Yep.
So what is it going to take to make altcoins, really go? Well, first things first, we need interest rates lowered. And I think we're going to probably get that in September. And I think it's going to be a whole lot more than people think. I think they're really going to lift their foot off the gas. I think we could see over a point.
Wow.
I honestly do. But I think it depends on a lot of what's going on in the world too. I mean,
fair enough.
We're knocking on Iran's door. Who knows if we are or are not going to get involved. War is profitable. There's no denying that. Nobody likes it, but it is profitable.
Yep.
Bitcoin could do something here over the next couple of months, and that's going to push all season to December, January. I mean, I'm thinking 26 before we see any significant, parabolic moves.
How do you feel about these companies taking the Michael Saylor strategy? Do you think they're going to continue to do well? Again, I know I'm taking you off on a tangent here, but
No, I
I
think they
promise I'll
will.
bring it
I
back.
mean, there's less and less Bitcoin available every day, and a few months back, the ETFs were buying up more than what was being output, on a daily
Yes,
basis. I mean, that
yes.
that's significant. I think with more companies coming in, that's only going to accelerate that, and then we're gonna hit that delta, and I don't think it's too far off. I
Hmm.
mean, I think by the next cycle, there's gonna be so much Bitcoin adoption that yes, the price is gonna be something crazy. I think within the next 5 years that will happen. I could be totally wrong, but I mean, I'm just
Oh
looking
yeah.
at it from of all these institutions and more companies coming in that have big bucks that can really put dents in the availability of Bitcoin on exchanges or in the world in general. Imagine if they woke up, tomorrow and said, came on the news and said, okay, no more gold in the world. It's all been
Oh yeah.
mined.
Yep.
What I mean, the price is going to go bonkers. Um,
Yep.
and I think we're getting close to that delta of where Bitcoin is going to make just a significant move to the upside in the next few years and stay there. Are we going to see a crazy move as last time? Probably not. Will we see a crazy move though? I think so. I think it's going to just happen at the end of the year, but going into 26.
Fair enough. Like I said, thank you for indulging me and going down that rabbit hole there with me. But we do got to wrap it up because this is getting
Yep.
long. And let you wrap it up. How do you want to tell people who are watching? Again, I'm going to just reframe and say, ideally, the person watching this may not have a lot of financial acumen, may not have a lot of financial background, that kind of thing, but looking to obviously dip their toes here in the space and may need to get their entire financial house in order. What would you like to say to them as they're coming in and moving on here in the space?
Well, I think I would say some different things to different age groups, right? Get yourself in order. Once you get your personal life, I'm talking the day in and day out stuff. You're not living beyond your means. You're not comparing up to other people
Yep.
that are just at a different level than you are. Know where you're at, embrace it, love it. Um, and stack sats, man. I mean, get you some Bitcoin, get you some Ethereum, get you some Solana, get all of those big layer one projects. As you call it that mid-tier risk, get projects that are running on whatever layer ones you're investing in. That way, if one of those pops off, the AVAXs or the Solanas, pop off, then you've got 3 or 4 more tokens underneath it, or I should say on top of it, running on platforms that are going to rise with it. And then you can just scalp that little bit, put it back in some lower risk stuff, and just keep building it, building it from the bottom up, getting that foundation, letting that foundation be the thing that really is the payoff on the end, is that nest egg, if you will. All the other higher risk stuff is just it's gonna make you money along the way. Pay yourself, reinvest, and be patient. It just takes patience. You've got to let those accounts start compounding. It's going to take 5-10 years to really see that those numbers start. Oh, when you
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at the
Oh, look what I
portfolio,
got. Yeah.
it takes some time, but if you do the time, you will benefit in the long run. Just having that good foundation, to me, is just everything, man. If you got the personal finances in order, and I've got my 401k working for me, I got these 2 IRA accounts I can move money between that I'm going to trade in with zero tax on. And then even better, I can't even touch that money until I'm 60. And then I've got my regular everyday, trading account, that's where I'm going to try to earn some income. Maybe that's the side hustle, because everyone needs that side hustle to get you over that hill. The side
Amen.
hustle shouldn't be paying for rent and car notes and stuff like that. I mean, that side hustle, live within your means. If fiat pays you $5,000 a month, then live within that $5,000 a month. Let that side hustle be the thing that's funding these other accounts, right? You're still paying yourself along the way that 10 or 15%, every time that you're getting money in, whether it's from a good trade or fiat or wherever it's coming from, and reinvest it. I mean, it doesn't, 10 years is not that long. If you're 20, by the time you're 30, to be sitting on a fat stack of cash is man, you're short term. You know,
Yeah, right.
I mean, 10 years is nothing. It really isn't. And I understand being in my 20s thinking, oh my God, when I'm 30, I'm going to be so old and this and that and the other. No, no, trust me, life gets better as you get older. As long as you're healthy, I should say, life gets better
Yeah,
as you get
yeah,
older,
facts,
you know.
facts.
So quit worrying about today and start worrying about 10 years from now. And you're going to be okay. I mean, trust me, it won't suck being in your 40s and having enough money to go on vacation whenever you want to go and do all the things that you want to do.
It all starts with making good decisions today. To get that
Yep.
foundation, it all starts in the here and in the now.
And it's the
Wow.
hardest part, man. It's the hardest part, you know, because you're just putting a little bit in and it's just growing a little bit. And
Yes.
you want it to go so much faster and it doesn't, you know. I mean, you got to plant the seed and forget about it, you know. Just
Right.
remember to water it. You know what I'm saying? Because if you sit there and watch that flower grow, man, that's brutal. You know, put the
Yep.
money, forget about it. Don't be checking portfolios every 5 minutes. Reach out to a financial advisor, you know, help them, you know, find someone that can help keep you on the rails.
Facts. Facts. All right, folks, you got some serious information between Crypto Billy and Jimmy Jim right here that have given you. They've laid it out in as plain English as you could possibly get it, and given you the benefit of their experience in the process of that. So, Jimmy, thank you again for being here today. I really, really
My pleasure.
appreciate it.
No, these are fun to do.
Well, you're going to be coming back. I believe me. I already kind of jotted your name in on a couple of future videos. So
Just hit me up. I'd be glad to come back, man.
and I
I love
appreciate
having
that.
these types of conversations and just hearing other people's opinions and I love collecting data. You know, it only helps me in making my decisions and hopefully someone today, you know, can take something and go, man, you know, that's the piece I'm missing or yes, I need to
Yes.
do that.
All right, Jimmy, we're out. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll
Thank
see you
you.
again soon. All right.
All
Take
right,
care.
man. Thank you.
I hope you were able to garner some great information from what Jimmy Jim had to say. And again, just a reminder, the links to Billy Goat Tales, Jimmy Jim, and Crypto Billy are all in the description. So if you are not already following these guys, make sure you do that. It's time to continue on in our Unlocking Your Crypto Journey educational series. And to do that, head on over to this video right here, and I will see you there.